Welcome to Calming Bedtime Journeys channel. Tonight we wander into the frozen world of a Norman castle in the year 1068, where towering stone walls promise safety, but cannot keep every bite of winter outside. What would it truly feel like to spend days surrounded by snow, knowing that every loaf of bread, every log on the fire, and every familiar face suddenly matters more than ever before? Hidden beneath the romance of medieval castles lies a quieter story, one woven from smoky rooms, aching hands, patient routines, and ordinary people doing extraordinary things simply to greet another sunrise. So, before you settle into the story, take a second to like the video and hit subscribe, and while you're getting comfortable, tell me your location and your local time in the comments. I always enjoy seeing where fellow night travelers are listening from around the world. Now dim the lights. You pull your wool cloak a little tighter as tiny flakes drift through the pale afternoon sky. At first, the snow seems almost playful. It lands softly on your sleeves before quietly disappearing. A few moments later, another wave arrives, then another. Soon the world begins turning white with surprising determination. Ahead stands a Norman castle, still relatively new by the standards of history. The year's 1068, only 2 years after William's famous victory at Hastings reshaped England forever. Across the country, sturdy castles are appearing like stone statements, each one declaring authority as much as offering protection. The castle before you rises from a gentle hill. Thick walls climb confidently toward the grey sky. A wooden palisade still surrounds parts of the outer defences because construction never truly seems finished. Builders always find another wall to strengthen or another tower to improve. The air smells of damp earth, fresh timber, and smoke drifting from countless fires. Somewhere nearby, someone is splitting wood with steady rhythm. The sharp crack echoes across the snowy yard before fading into the growing silence. Snow changes sound. Even now you notice it. Voices seem softer. Footsteps become muted. Horses snort warm clouds into the cold air while their hooves sink into slushy ground. Every breath feels crisp enough to sting your nose before warming inside your lungs. A guard standing near the entrance glances toward the sky with quiet concern rather than admiration. Beautiful snow means difficult work. Beautiful snow also means uncertain roads. His expression suggests he has seen enough winters to know that the first snowfall rarely tells the whole story. You follow a small group entering through the gatehouse. Heavy wooden doors remain open for now, although everyone understands they may close quickly if weather worsens or unwanted visitors appear. Iron fittings gleam faintly beneath a dusting of white inside. The courtyard feels busy despite the weather. Servants hurry between buildings carrying baskets covered with rough cloth. Stable hands lead horses toward shelter before icy footing becomes dangerous. Children dart briefly through the open space until an older woman calls them back with practiced authority. Nobody wastes movement. That becomes one of the first lessons you notice. Every journey across the yard has purpose. Every armful of wood matters. Every bucket filled before water freezes could spare extra effort later. Modern imagination often pictures medieval castles as places filled only with knights polishing armour, or noble ladies gazing dramatically from windows. Reality proves far busier. A working castle resembles a small village enclosed by walls. Bakers, cooks, grooms, servants, craftsmen, priests, guards, children, and labourers all share the same confined world. Without them, Nothing functions. A gentle breeze slips through your cloak. You immediately understand why wool is treasured. It feels slightly rough against your skin, yet traps welcome warmth. Linen rests beneath it, softer but far less useful against winter's steady advance. Historians generally agree that layered clothing formed the best defense against cold during this period. Thick woven wool retained heat even after becoming slightly damp, making it invaluable during harsh seasons when perfect dryness remained impossible. Nearby, two women shake heavy blankets before carrying them indoors. Tiny crystals scatter into the air like glitter before vanishing. Their laughter rises briefly despite the cold, reminding you that ordinary joy survives remarkably stubborn conditions. Not everyone inside these walls arrived willingly. Some serve because duty requires it. Others owe labour to their lord. A fortunate few hold respected positions earned through valuable skills. Every person carries different responsibilities, yet the approaching storm quietly ignores every social rank. Snow settles equally upon noble cloaks and servant caps. That truth feels strangely comforting. You continue deeper into the courtyard where stacked firewood forms neat rows beneath simple coverings. The piles seem impressive at first glance. Then you remember how quickly hungry fireplaces consume timber during freezing nights. Wood is almost another kind of food, without enough of it. Stone walls become cold companions. The castle itself demonstrates Norman engineering that changed England after the conquest. Massive stone keeps gradually replaced many earlier wooden fortifications because they resisted fire more effectively and projected lasting power. Yet historians still debate exactly how quickly individual castles transitioned from timber to permanent stone, since construction varied greatly depending on wealth, local resources, and urgent political needs. As you study the towering walls, another curious story comes to mind. Some medieval people believed unusual winter storms carried hidden meanings. A particularly fierce snowfall might be interpreted as divine warning, heavenly blessing, or simple reminder of human humility. Scholars continue discussing how widespread such beliefs truly were because written records often preserve dramatic stories more eagerly than everyday opinions. The snow grows thicker. It lands upon shoulders without invitation. It settles along roof edges. It gathers quietly inside footprints before they completely disappear. Time itself feels slower. A black dog trots confidently across the courtyard, carrying something suspiciously resembling a stolen crust of bread. No one immediately chases him. Perhaps this has happened before. Judging from his relaxed pace, it almost certainly has. A stable boy notices your amused expression and shrugs with remarkable acceptance. Some battles simply cannot be won. The smell changes again as you approach the kitchens. Rich aromas of onions, simmering broth, and fresh bread drift through narrow openings designed more for ventilation than comfort. Smoke curls upward into the whitening sky before dissolving among falling flakes. Your stomach answers immediately. Food carries special importance before severe weather. Cooks work carefully to stretch supplies while taking advantage of whatever remains fresh. Salted meat hangs nearby, protected for difficult weeks ahead. Dried peas, oats, beans, and stored grains promise dependable meals even when fields sleep beneath snow. Luxury becomes less important than reliability. You place one gloved hand against the castle wall. The stone feels astonishingly cold. Its surface steals warmth almost instantly. Thick walls defend against attackers, yet they also absorb winter's chill with stubborn efficiency. Interior fires help. but no medieval castle becomes comfortably warm by modern standards. Even the Lord experiences cold rooms, just fewer of them. Above, narrow windows admit limited light. Glass remains expensive and uncommon. So many openings rely upon shutters or stretched material instead. Bright sunshine would help little today anyway, because clouds cover nearly every corner of the sky. Snowflakes continue their patient descent. One lands on your glove. You watch its delicate shape for a heartbeat before it melts into a tiny drop. Around you, life refuses to pause. A carpenter shoulders long boards toward a workshop. Two servants carefully balance steaming buckets whose contents remain mysterious. A priest crosses the yard with measured steps, his robes brushing fresh snow without apparent concern. Guards exchange quiet words before returning their attention beyond the walls. Everyone prepares, nobody panics. Experience has taught these people that winter rewards calm persistence more than hurried fear. You realize the castle does not stand against nature so much as negotiate with it every single day. The walls provide shelter. The people provide effort. Together they create something stronger than either could achieve alone. The snowfall thickens until distant hills disappear behind a pale curtain. The world beyond the battlements slowly fades, leaving only this busy community enclosed by stone, smoke and determination. As daylight gently softens, you follow the warm scent drifting from the great hall, knowing that beyond those sturdy doors waits the living heart of the castle, where crackling fires, shared meals, and countless quiet conversations will carry everyone one careful step closer to tomorrow. You step through the broad doorway and immediately notice the change in the air. The wind no longer pushes against your face, yet true warmth remains elusive. Instead, you enter a world balanced somewhere between shelter and cold, where every fire works tirelessly against the chill resting inside thick stone walls. The first sensation is the smell. Wood smoke hangs gently overhead, mixing with beeswax candles, damp wool, roasted meat, and the faint earthy scent carried indoors on countless muddy boots. It is surprisingly comforting. Every fragrance speaks of people sharing the same space and quietly enduring the same season. A servant closes the heavy wooden door behind another arriving group. The outside wind disappears almost instantly. The silence feels deeper, not complete silence. Of course, medieval castles are never truly quiet. Somewhere nearby, someone laughs. A pot lid rattles against iron. Boots scrape across rushes covering the floor. A dog gives one sleepy sigh before settling closer to the fire. You slowly remove your gloves. The air still feels cold against your fingers. That surprises you. Many people imagine castles as warm sanctuaries because of their roaring fireplaces. In truth, even wealthy households often accepted chilly rooms as ordinary life. Heat gathered close to the flames while corners remained stubbornly cold throughout winter. Stone keeps memories, especially winter memories. The walls surrounding you measure several feet thick. They protect everyone from attack and resist fire far better than timber buildings. Yet the same walls eagerly absorb cold from the outside world. Hours of burning logs only soften that grip. You move nearer the central hearth. Now you feel the difference. Gentle warmth reaches your face first. Your hands slowly recover from the icy courtyard. Tiny sparks drift upward before disappearing into the smoke rising toward the roof. Above, openings allow some smoke to escape, although not all of it finds the exit. Your eyes water slightly. Nobody else seems bothered. They have grown accustomed to it. Long before chimneys became common, indoor fires filled living spaces with varying amounts of smoke. People simply accepted watery eyes and smoky ceilings as part of ordinary existence. Clothing carried the scent, hair carried it. Even treasured blankets absorbed it over time. The castle breathes through smoke. Nearby, several benches line the hall. Their surfaces are polished smooth after years of daily use. A few residents sit quietly repairing clothing while others warm stiff fingers before returning to their duties. Nobody appears idle. Even resting serves a purpose. You notice a young woman carefully turning a pair of damp boots toward the fire without placing them too close. Leather dries too quickly and becomes brittle if overheated. Experience teaches patience better than any written instruction. A small child stretches both hands toward the flames before an older man gently pulls them back. Close enough, not closer. Simple lessons like these pass from generation to generation without ceremony. Winter itself becomes the teacher. You glance upward toward the wooden beams supporting the roof. They disappear into soft shadows where smoke slowly gathers. Tiny ribbons of light slip through narrow openings, creating pale columns that dance whenever the wind shifts outside. Everything feels alive. The fire crackles, the candles flicker, the beams sigh quietly as they settle. The castle never truly sleeps. You run one hand along the edge of a sturdy table. The wood feels smooth from years of use, yet bears countless marks left by knives, bowls, and hard-working hands. Beauty exists here, but usefulness always comes first. That practical spirit shapes nearly every object inside these walls. A carved cup may display careful craftsmanship, yet it still serves ale. A woven blanket may feature colourful patterns, yet its first purpose remains warmth. Decoration never completely escapes necessity. Across the room, several servants shake snow from heavy cloaks before hanging them near the fire. Steam rises gently from damp fabric. It almost looks magical. Then someone sneezes. Reality quickly returns. Historians widely agree that clothing required constant maintenance during medieval winters. Wet garments could become dangerous if left unattended. Drying, brushing, patching, and mending occupied countless hours that rarely appear in romantic paintings of castle life. You begin appreciating invisible labour. Every comfortable cloak represents hours of spinning wool, weaving cloth, cutting fabric, stitching seams, and repairing worn places. Warmth depends upon many careful hands long before winter arrives. A cheerful voice draws your attention toward one corner where an elderly woman twists wool into yarn using a spindle. Her fingers move with remarkable confidence despite their age. The motion appears almost effortless. Almost. Years of practice hide the difficulty. She smiles as another woman joins her, carrying a basket of fleece. They exchange quiet conversation while continuing their work, even during harsh weather. Useful tasks continue wherever light and warmth allow. Snow falls outside, thread grows inside, life continues. A curious tale drifts through your thoughts. Some old traditions suggested that spinning during certain holy feast days invited misfortune or strange supernatural visitors. Stories varied from village to village, and many probably served as gentle reminders to observe important religious celebrations rather than strict warnings. Historians remain uncertain about how seriously most ordinary families believed such tales because folklore rarely leaves precise records. Still, the stories linger. Winter encourages imagination. Long nights invite unusual thoughts. A gust of wind presses briefly against the shutters. Everyone hears it. Nobody rushes toward the doors. They simply continue working, trusting the castle to withstand another challenge from the weather. Confidence grows slowly. Stone helps. Experience helps more. Near the hearth, a guard removes his gloves and rubs his hands together. Tiny white marks remain where cold pressed against his skin. His spear leans within easy reach. Duty pauses for warmth, but never completely disappears. Even indoors, readiness matters. The castle exists because danger always remains possible. Snow may discourage raiders, yet it also slows friendly travellers carrying news or supplies. Isolation can become its own quiet challenge. You notice baskets tucked beneath several benches. Inside lie kindling, small branches, dry moss, bundles of straw. Every scrap capable of feeding tomorrow's fires receives careful attention. Waste would seem almost unimaginable during a severe winter. Nothing useful disappears casually. The floor beneath your boots feels surprisingly soft. Rushes mixed with fragrant herbs cover much of the surface. Fresh layers replace older ones throughout the year, helping reduce dampness while adding pleasant scents. Lavender, sweet herbs, and other local plants sometimes join the mixture depending upon availability. The aroma remains subtle, just enough. It gently competes with smoke without completely defeating it. Scholars still debate how frequently medieval households change these floor coverings, because practices likely differed according to wealth, region, and season. Popular imagination often assumes filthy floors remained untouched for years, but evidence suggests many households refreshed them more regularly than later myths claimed. You pause beside one narrow window. Outside, snow continues falling with quiet determination. The courtyard already looks different from when you entered. Earlier footprints have softened beneath fresh layers. Roof lines wear smooth white blankets. Smoke rises almost straight upward into the grey afternoon. The world beyond the walls fades further. Inside, someone begins humming. The melody carries no urgency. Another voice joins. Soon the tune drifts gently through the hall before dissolving into ordinary conversation again. No audience applauds. No performance has been planned. Music simply appears for a few peaceful moments before daily responsibilities reclaim everyone's attention. You smile without realizing it. Comfort arrives in unexpected ways, not through luxury, through familiarity. You settle onto a sturdy bench near the fire and feel warmth finally reaching your boots. The leather softens. Your shoulders relax beneath the weight of your cloak. Outside, the storm quietly strengthens. But within these walls, people answer winter not with dramatic speeches or heroic gestures, but through countless ordinary acts repeated faithfully each day. A log shifts in the hearth. Bright sparks rise. Someone adds another piece of firewood with practiced care. The flames respond immediately, pushing fresh warmth across the hall as evening slowly approaches, inviting you deeper into the shared life waiting around the great fire. You follow the growing warmth toward the centre of the great hall, where nearly every path inside the castle eventually seems to lead. Here, under high timber beams darkened by years of smoke, the rhythm of daily life becomes easier to understand. The hall is more than a dining room. It is a meeting place, a workplace, a shelter, a courtroom, and sometimes even a bedroom. Everything gathers here, people included. The great fire burns steadily in the centre, its orange light dancing across polished cups and rough wooden tables. Every flicker changes the shadows on the walls. Faces brighten, then soften again. The movement is slow enough to feel almost hypnotic. You pause for a moment. The fire speaks first. It crackles softly as resin hidden inside the logs bursts into tiny sparks. Occasionally a larger piece of wood settles with a deep sigh, sending a brief shower of glowing embers upward before they disappear into the smoky air. The sound comforts everyone. Without the fire, the hall would become an enormous stone box filled with cold. Servants move between benches carrying heavy pottery bowls. Their footsteps are careful but unhurried. Nobody runs unless there is real danger. Haste usually creates more problems than it solves. You find a place along one of the long tables. The wood beneath your hands feels smooth from decades of use. Countless meals have been shared here. Countless conversations have drifted into the rafters and vanished forever. A wooden bowl is placed before you. Steam curls upward. The smell reaches you immediately. Barley, onions, leeks, a little cabbage, perhaps a few beans. The broth is simple, yet deeply satisfying after standing outside in the snow. Rich spices exist, but they remain expensive luxuries reserved for special occasions or wealthy households. Everyday meals depend upon reliable ingredients stored safely through winter. You lift the spoon. The warmth spreads through your hands before the first bite even reaches your mouth. It tastes earthy, gentle, filling. Not every meal seeks excitement. Some simply promise another day of strength. Nearby, a baker slices dark bread with practiced confidence. The loaf has a firm crust and a dense centre. Nothing about it feels delicate. It is bread made for work rather than celebration. You notice that nobody wastes even the smallest piece. A stray crumb is picked up without hesitation. Food deserves respect, especially now. Outside, the snowfall grows heavier with every passing hour. Inside, every stored sack of grain becomes more valuable. Every barrel matters. Every smoked fish hanging from a beam represents careful planning long before winter arrived. Historians agree that successful medieval households relied heavily upon preparation. Autumn was a season of preserving food because nobody could depend upon fresh harvest once deep winter settled across the land. Good planning meant survival. Poor planning invited hardship. Across the hall, the Lord finally enters with several trusted companions. Conversation quiets without completely stopping. Respect flows naturally toward him, though the atmosphere remains less formal than many modern films suggest. He removes his thick cloak. Snow slides from the fabric onto the rush-covered floor. One servant quickly gathers the damp garment while another offers a cup filled with warm ale. Leadership here looks surprisingly ordinary. The Lord listens before speaking. He asks about the livestock. He asks about firewood. He asks whether the messenger sent yesterday has returned. The answers are brief. Not yet. Roads are worsening. Wood remains sufficient. The conversation carries no panic. Instead, it resembles careful bookkeeping shaped by winter weather. Every decision now balances comfort against future need. You realize something important. Power inside the castle does not only mean giving commands. It also means worrying first. Nearby sits the lady of the household. She speaks quietly with two women examining folded cloth spread across the table. One piece appears newly woven. Another requires careful repair before it becomes useful again. Her attention rarely wanders. She notices details, a loose stitch, a tired servant, a child rubbing cold hands together. Running a castle demands observation as much as authority. The hall gradually grows louder again as people return to conversation. Stories drift from one bench to another. Some discuss weather. Others recall better harvests. A pair of older soldiers quietly compare old campaigns while warming stiff knees beside the fire. One laughs unexpectedly. The sound spreads. Soon several others join him. Laughter always seems warmer indoors. You glance toward a young musician sitting near one wall with a small stringed instrument resting across his lap. He gently plucks a familiar tune while people continue eating. The music never overwhelms conversation. Instead, it slips quietly between voices like another guest sharing the evening. No grand performance, only companionship. The melody reminds you that entertainment in the medieval world often depended upon whoever happened to possess useful skills. A talented storyteller or musician could brighten long winter evenings without requiring elaborate preparation. As darkness slowly gathers outside, candles are lit one after another. Each tiny flame adds its own circle of light. The hall becomes softer, golden, almost dreamlike. You notice shadows stretching across the floor while smoke continues climbing toward the roof. Occasionally the wind shifts, sending a faint ribbon of smoke drifting lower before it rises once more. Nobody complains. This is ordinary life. A curious tale reaches your ears from two elderly servants sharing memories near the hearth. One insists that hearing an owl call repeatedly during heavy snowfall foretells an unusually long winter. The other shakes his head and smiles, claiming the birds simply know where mice hide beneath the snow. Who is correct? Perhaps both, perhaps neither. Historians still discuss how much everyday superstition influenced practical decisions in medieval households. Written records preserve official religious teachings more often than fireside conversations, leaving many ordinary beliefs hidden beneath the passing centuries. Some mysteries remain comfortable companions. A small dog circles beneath the table searching for opportunity. Eventually, a child quietly slips him a tiny piece of bread. The animal accepts the gift with remarkable dignity before curling beside the fire. Nobody seems surprised. Perhaps everyone pretends not to notice. The warmth slowly reaches every corner it can. Not every corner, just enough. You stretch your hands toward the flames again. Your fingers no longer ache from the cold. The skin feels dry from repeated exposure to heat and winter air. Yet the sensation brings quiet relief. Outside, the snow continues its patient work. Inside, life adjusts. The hall never stops moving. A servant refills drinking cups. Another carries away empty bowls. Someone adds another heavy log to the fire. The carpenter speaks with the blacksmith about repairing a broken cart once the weather improves. Even plans for spring begin during winter. Nothing remains completely still. You notice the seating arrangement reflects the social order, without requiring anyone to explain it. The lord and his closest companions occupy the high table placed slightly above the others. Important guests receive places nearby. Servants eat later or in different areas according to custom and responsibility. The differences are clear, yet tonight everyone depends upon the same roof, the same fire, the same stores of food, the same weather waiting outside. Snow has a quiet way of reminding people that nature pays little attention to titles. You listen as the wind brushes gently against the walls. It sounds distant now, softened by thick stone and heavy timber. Earlier it seemed sharp and demanding. Here inside the great hall it has become little more than a reminder that winter remains patiently beyond the doors. The evening meal slowly reaches its end. Wooden bowls are gathered, tables are wiped clean. The youngest children begin yawning despite their efforts to stay awake. Older faces soften beneath the warm candlelight. The castle seems to breathe together. You realize that the Great Hall is not merely the heart of the fortress because it contains the largest fire. It earns that place because it gathers every life into one shared rhythm. Hunger, warmth, conversation, duty, hope, and quiet endurance all meet beneath this smoky roof, while snow buries the world beyond the walls. The night has only begun, and already tomorrow's work is quietly waiting for those who will rise long before the first hint of dawn. You wake before the sky has even considered becoming lighter. The Great Hall is quieter now, but it is far from still. A few glowing embers continue to pulse inside the hearth, casting a faint orange light across sleeping figures wrapped in thick wool blankets. Somewhere in the darkness, a log settles with a gentle crack. Morning begins long before sunrise, especially in winter. You pull your cloak around your shoulders and follow the soft glow of a single lantern moving across the hall. It belongs to a servant who walks with practiced confidence, avoiding benches and baskets without hesitation. She has travelled this path thousands of times. Outside. The heavy door opens only wide enough for one person. Cold air rushes in immediately. It wakes everyone. The courtyard has changed completely overnight. Snow blankets every roof, every barrel, and every pile of firewood not tucked beneath shelter. Footprints from yesterday have disappeared beneath the smooth white covering. The storm has erased almost every sign of the previous day. The castle must begin again. You hear the scrape of wooden shovels before you see them. Several workers clear narrow paths between important buildings. Nobody tries to remove every inch of snow. That would be impossible. Instead, they focus on the routes people need most: the kitchens, the stable, the well, the gatehouse. Each cleared path saves precious energy later. A stable boy hurries past, carrying a bundle of hay nearly as large as himself. Frost clings to his eyebrows. His cheeks glow bright red from the cold. He smiles anyway. The horses cannot feed themselves. You step into the stable, and the air changes at once. It feels warmer than the courtyard, though hardly comfortable. The smell of hay, leather, damp wood, and animals fills the building. Horses stamp their hooves, sending small clouds of straw into the air. One grey mare turns toward you. Warm breath escapes her nostrils in gentle white clouds. She nudges a wooden feeding trough with quiet impatience. Every creature inside the castle follows a routine, animals included. The stable hands work with calm efficiency. Water buckets must be checked because freezing temperatures can turn them solid overnight. Fresh bedding is spread beneath the horses. Saddles are inspected for dampness. Leather left wet for too long can stiffen and crack. Nothing is ignored. Even the smallest task prevents larger problems later. Surviving household accounts from medieval estates show that caring for valuable horses remained a daily priority regardless of weather. A strong riding horse represented transportation, communication, and military strength all at once. Outside, another servant rings a small handbell. Breakfast preparations have begun. You follow the sound back toward the kitchens. Smoke rises steadily from several chimneys and roof openings. The cooks have been awake for hours already. Inside, The heat greets you almost like an old friend. Large pots simmer gently above open fires. A young apprentice carries armfuls of split wood from one corner, while another kneads dough with determined hands. Flour dust floats softly through the warm air before settling across the table. The smell is irresistible. Fresh bread, porridge, wood smoke, a hint of onions. Simple scents become luxurious during winter. One cook carefully stirs a thick pot with a wooden paddle longer than your arm. She pauses only long enough to taste the mixture before adding another handful of oats. Experience replaces written recipes. Measurements live in memory. Nearby, another servant counts loaves before placing them inside woven baskets. No loaf disappears unnoticed. Food stores must last. You begin noticing how many jobs overlap. While one person prepares breakfast, another cleans yesterday's cooking pots. Someone else sharpens knives. A younger helper sweeps ashes from beneath the ovens before fresh fires burn hotter. The work never truly ends, it simply changes. A quiet conversation drifts across the room. Someone mentions the snowfall. Another wonders whether nearby villages received even more. A third simply shrugs. Winter does not ask permission. As you leave the kitchens, you find several women drawing water from the well. The rope feels stiff beneath gloved hands. Ice forms around the edges despite everyone's efforts to keep it clear. Water remains essential. Every bucket requires effort. Excavations at medieval settlements suggest that wells demanded constant attention during freezing weather. Ice had to be broken, ropes dried, and wooden equipment maintained if the household hoped to avoid dangerous shortages. The work appears ordinary. It is anything but easy. You help carry one bucket toward the hall. The wooden handle presses firmly against your palm. Water sloshes gently with every careful step. You understand why nobody carries more than necessary. Even strength has limits. Nearby, an elderly servant kneels beside a pile of clothing. She mends quietly. Needle, thread, steady fingers. The garment resting across her lap has clearly lived a long life. One elbow has been patched several times, another sleeve shows careful stitching almost invisible against the wool. Nothing useful is discarded simply because it looks worn. One old household saying claimed that every repaired stitch chased a little of winter's hardship away. Whether anyone truly believed the words or simply enjoyed repeating them is impossible to know. But the quiet rhythm of mending certainly offered comfort during long snowy days. The thought makes you smile. Hope often hides inside small habits. A carpenter emerges from his workshop carrying newly repaired stools. He pauses to brush snow from the seat before delivering them to the hall. Nothing flashy, simply useful. The castle depends upon people like him every single day. You begin recognizing familiar faces. The baker, the stable boy, the elderly seamstress, the guard at the gate. Each person contributes something essential. Remove one task, and another quickly becomes harder. The community resembles woven cloth. Every thread supports another. Not every detail of servant life has survived the centuries. Daily routines were rarely recorded unless something unusual happened. Much of what we understand today comes from comparing household records, archaeology, and later medieval accounts, leaving historians to piece together ordinary mornings from scattered fragments. Those fragments tell a remarkably human story. Cold fingers, heavy buckets, warm bread, shared labour. As daylight slowly brightens behind thick clouds, more activity spreads across the courtyard. Chickens scratch carefully through cleared patches searching for grain. Two guards exchange places at the gate. Smoke continues climbing into the pale sky. The snowfall finally begins to slow, only for a while. You can almost sense another band of clouds gathering beyond the hills. A young servant suddenly laughs as she nearly slips on packed snow while balancing a basket of onions. She catches herself at the last moment. The onions survive. Everyone nearby chuckles. Even she laughs. Moments like these matter. They interrupt routine just enough to remind everyone that joy requires no special invitation. You stand quietly for a moment, watching the castle awaken completely. Every building now hums with quiet purpose. Fires burn brighter. Doors open and close. Voices drift across the courtyard. Dogs weave between busy feet, hoping for dropped scraps. The storm remains outside. Life remains inside. The balance holds for another day. Soon your attention turns toward the upper rooms, where the Lord has already begun meeting with trusted companions, while servants keep the castle alive through countless unseen tasks. Important decisions are beginning above, where every report about supplies, weather, and distant roads may shape the weeks ahead. You climb the worn wooden stairs at an unhurried pace, placing one hand against the smooth railing polished by generations of travellers. Each step creaks softly beneath your boots. The sound blends with the distant murmur of voices rising from the great hall below. The air grows cooler. Heat prefers lower rooms. The upper chamber is larger than you expected, though it is hardly luxurious by modern standards. A broad table stands near the fire, covered with rolled parchments, wax tablets, and a few wooden cups. A narrow window admits pale daylight, revealing snow still drifting across the courtyard outside. The Lord stands beside the table with his steward. Neither appears rushed. Their conversation moves carefully from one concern to the next. A servant enters carrying a small basket filled with sealed messages. The parchment edges are slightly curled from damp air despite every effort to protect them during travel. Not all the messages are recent. Several roads have become difficult to cross. Communication slows whenever winter tightens its grip on the countryside. One letter is opened with quiet care. The steward reads aloud. A nearby village reports deeper snow than expected. A bridge farther south has become dangerous after thick ice formed along its timbers. Another messenger has not yet arrived. Though nobody immediately assumes the worst, travel simply takes longer now. The Lord listens without interruption. When the reading ends, he asks only a few questions. How much grain remains? How many horses are fit for travel? Has anyone checked the sheep this morning? The questions reveal his priorities: food, transport, livestock. These are the foundations of survival. Many Norman lords spent a great deal of time overseeing practical matters rather than issuing dramatic commands. Their authority depended upon managing estates, collecting resources, maintaining loyalty, and preparing for unexpected difficulties. Power often looked remarkably ordinary. Outside, another wave of snow brushes against the narrow window. Tiny flakes swirl past the opening before disappearing into the pale sky. You notice the steward making small marks upon a wax tablet. Nothing is left entirely to memory. Numbers matter. A careful count today may prevent hardship next month. Nearby rests a chest reinforced with iron bands. Inside lie important documents recording land, obligations, and agreements. Such records represent more than ink upon parchment. They define rights, responsibilities, and valuable property. A castle protects people, Records protect authority. The Lord finally moves toward the window. He studies the weather without speaking. Perhaps he's calculating. Perhaps simply thinking. The snow reveals little. It covers roads and fields with equal enthusiasm. A knock sounds at the door. A guard steps inside. His boots carry fresh snow onto the floor. He reports that 2 travellers have appeared beyond the outer gate asking for shelter before darkness falls. One claims to be a merchant. The other serves as his assistant. The Lord nods thoughtfully. Hospitality carries weight in the medieval world, particularly during dangerous weather. Refusing shelter without good reason could damage reputations as surely as offering it carelessly could create risk. Every stranger presents a choice. The travellers are admitted after their belongings receive careful inspection. You quietly follow as they enter the hall below. Their cloaks glisten with melting snow. Their cheeks are pale from the cold. One bows respectfully before accepting a warm drink offered by a servant. Relief softens his face almost immediately. He has clearly spent many hours outdoors. Written accounts from the period often describe travellers timing their journeys carefully during winter, though sudden storms could still trap them far from home. Castles, monasteries, and friendly villages sometimes became unexpected refuges when weather turned severe. Not every journey followed its plan. The merchant thanks the household repeatedly. His voice carries genuine gratitude. He explains that drifting snow nearly concealed the road leading toward the castle. Without spotting the highest tower rising above the trees, he might have wandered much farther before nightfall. Stone can become a landmark, as well as a fortress. While the newcomers warm themselves, several servants quietly exchange information gathered from their conversation. Nearby villages remain safe. The nearest river has begun freezing. One mill now works only intermittently because of accumulating ice. Every scrap of news proves valuable. Even ordinary observations. Back upstairs. Discussion resumes. The steward recommends reducing the amount of firewood burned in lesser used rooms. Not drastically, just enough to preserve supplies. The suggestion receives thoughtful agreement. Comfort must sometimes yield to caution. You walk toward another narrow window overlooking the inner courtyard. From this height, daily activity resembles a carefully practiced dance. Workers carry water. Children help gather kindling. Dogs patrol familiar paths. Smoke rises steadily from kitchen fires. No movement appears wasted. The castle functions because every task supports another. An elderly advisor seated near the fire begins telling a curious story while waiting for the meeting to continue. He recalls hearing that some people believed ravens flying unusually low before a snowstorm could warn of harsher weather ahead. Whether the birds truly knew anything remained uncertain. Still, many travellers preferred paying attention. Nature sometimes notices changes before people do. The tale earns a few quiet smiles. No one argues. No one fully accepts it either. It simply joins countless winter stories passed between generations. Exactly how much medieval people relied upon signs from nature remains difficult to determine. Practical experience certainly shaped many decisions, though folklore often blended comfortably alongside careful observation. The two were not always separate. A servant refills the cups with warm ale flavoured lightly with herbs. The drink sends gentle steam into the cool room. You wrap both hands around the cup. The warmth feels wonderful. Outside, the daylight begins fading earlier than you expect. Winter afternoons surrender quickly. The steward lights another candle. Its flame reflects softly upon polished metal buckles and the smooth surface of the wax tablets. The room feels smaller now, more intimate. Conversation shifts toward the coming weeks. If snow continues, hunting parties may become less successful. If roads remain blocked, fresh supplies will arrive slowly. If livestock stay healthy, much of the household will manage comfortably. Every possibility carries another behind it. Leadership during winter depends less upon certainty than preparation. The Lord finally stands. The meeting ends without dramatic speeches. Each person simply returns to familiar responsibilities. The steward gathers the records. The guard resumes his watch. The advisor settles beside the fire. The rhythm of the castle continues. You remain by the window for another quiet moment. Snowflakes drift lazily through the fading light. Below, someone laughs while leading a stubborn mule towards shelter. A cook calls for another basket of firewood. Children hurry indoors before evening deepens. Life keeps moving. The weather shapes it, but does not stop it. As darkness settles over the castle once more, warm light begins glowing from the kitchen buildings. Rich scents float upward into the cold evening air, promising another shared meal prepared by hands that have scarcely rested since before dawn. Your attention naturally follows those comforting aromas, knowing that behind those busy kitchen doors, the night's most important work is only beginning. You follow the rich scent of cooking until the warmth of the kitchen surrounds you once again. The room feels even busier than it did that morning. Evening meals demand careful timing, especially when dozens of hungry people expect food before darkness settles completely over the castle. The fires glow brightly. They never seem to rest. Several hearths burn at once, each serving a different purpose. One supports a large iron cauldron where thick pottage bubbles steadily. Another roasts joints of meat above glowing embers. A smaller fire heats water for washing bowls and cooking pots after the meal. The air feels wonderfully warm, almost too warm, after spending time in the snowy courtyard. The sudden heat makes your cheeks tingle. Smoke curls lazily toward the roof openings, while tiny sparks occasionally leap from the burning logs before fading into darkness. Every corner holds movement. A baker kneads another batch of dough with strong, practiced hands. Nearby, a young helper grinds coarse grain using a heavy quern stone. The circular motion never seems to stop. Round and round, patiently, the stone sings its quiet song against itself. Grinding flour required remarkable effort. Before watermills or windmills could handle every need, even households with access to mills often finish smaller quantities by hand, especially during difficult weather when travel became uncertain. You watch the apprentice pause to stretch sore shoulders, only for a moment. Then the work begins again. Along one wall stands a row of wooden barrels secured with sturdy hoops. One contains salted pork, another stores dried peas. Nearby rests a barrel of oats waiting to become tomorrow's breakfast. Nothing sits carelessly. Each container is raised slightly above the floor to reduce dampness. Cloth covers protect valuable food from dust and curious mice. The kitchen staff checks these stores almost as faithfully as guards watch the gate. Preparation is a daily habit, not a single event. You notice bundles of herbs hanging from wooden beams overhead. Sage, thyme, mint, rosemary where available. Their gentle fragrance mingles with smoke and bread, creating an aroma that fills every breath with quiet comfort. A cook reaches upward. She removes several sprigs. They disappear into the simmering pot. The smell changes instantly, more fragrant, more inviting. Medieval cooks relied heavily upon preserved foods during winter, but herbs helped brighten meals that might otherwise seem repetitive after weeks of cold weather. Even a small handful could transform an ordinary dish. Across the room, another servant carefully trims hardened cheese into manageable pieces. None is wasted. Tiny fragments are gathered into a wooden bowl for later use in soups or sauces. Waste has no welcome here. Every ingredient carries value. You step toward a sturdy wooden table covered with vegetables collected months earlier. Onions, turnips, leeks, carrots, a few wrinkled apples resting in woven baskets. Time has marked them, yet they remain useful. Good storage often determined whether vegetables survive the season. Cool, dry spaces beneath buildings or inside specially prepared storage pits helped extend their usefulness far beyond harvest. A young kitchen helper proudly carries a basket of eggs toward the cook. She counts them twice, then smiles with relief. None have broken. Small victories deserve quiet celebration. The head cook notices your curiosity and gestures toward a heavy iron pot hanging above the fire. Its surface has darkened through years of constant use. She stirs slowly. The thick wooden spoon moves with calm confidence. Experience has taught her exactly how quickly the mixture should bubble. Not too fast, not too slowly. The rhythm matters. Recipes during this period often depended less upon written instructions than upon observation and memory. Young apprentices learned by watching skilled cooks day after day, gradually absorbing knowledge through repetition rather than reading. Knowledge passed from hand to hand, like the spoon itself. Near the doorway, two servants unpack supplies brought earlier by the travelling merchant. The bundle contains a modest quantity of dried figs, a little honey, and several small packets of spices carefully wrapped against moisture. The entire kitchen brightens, not because the amount is large, because such treats are uncommon. A pinch of pepper, a little cinnamon, perhaps a few cloves. These precious flavours have travelled remarkable distances before reaching this snowy castle. Trade routes stretched across Europe and beyond, connecting distant markets through countless merchants willing to brave difficult roads and uncertain weather. Luxury often arrived one small packet at a time. One assistant carefully locks the spices inside a wooden chest after measuring them. Nothing is left unattended. One old kitchen saying claimed that if the first loaf placed into the oven cracked neatly across its top, the household would enjoy good fortune through the coming week. Whether anyone truly trusted the omen mattered less than the smiles it encouraged whenever the bread baked successfully. Simple traditions eased long winters. Much about everyday kitchen customs survives only in scattered records and comparisons with later medieval households. Certain habits almost certainly differed from one region to another, leaving modern researchers to assemble the larger picture from many small pieces. The picture remains incomplete, yet wonderfully human. You notice another fascinating detail. The cooks rarely work alone. Tasks overlap naturally. One stirs, another chops vegetables, a third prepares serving bowls. Someone else carries fresh water. Nobody waits for instructions. Everyone understands the rhythm. The kitchen resembles an orchestra without a visible conductor. Each movement supports another. The music happens anyway. A burst of laughter suddenly fills the room. One young helper accidentally dusts himself with flour while lifting a heavy sack. His dark hair turns pale in an instant. He freezes. The others stare, then everyone laughs together. Even the head cook cannot hide her smile. The young man bows dramatically before returning to work. Now looking rather like an elderly baker despite his youthful face, The moment lasts only seconds, yet it lightens the entire room. Outside, snow taps softly against the shutters. Inside, warmth continues winning its quiet battle. The roasting meat releases rich aromas that mingle with baking bread. Fat drips gently onto glowing embers, sending brief bursts of fragrant smoke into the air. Your stomach reminds you that evening approaches. Several large wooden trenchers are stacked neatly beside the serving area. Cloths have already been laid across baskets of fresh bread to keep them warm as long as possible. Everything anticipates the coming meal. Nothing feels rushed, only prepared. You help carry a basket toward the great hall. The fresh loaves feel surprisingly heavy. Their crusts are firm beneath your fingertips, while gentle warmth escapes through the cloth covering them. People notice immediately. Fresh bread always attracts attention. As you enter the hall, servants begin arranging bowls, cups, and spoons with practiced precision. The fire burns brightly, waiting to welcome everyone after another day shaped by snow. Careful work and steady patience. The kitchens slowly grow quieter behind you, not silent, never silent. There are still pots to wash, ashes to clear, tomorrow's grain to measure before anyone sleeps. Another day's preparations will already be underway, because winter rewards those who think one meal ahead, one firewood stack ahead, and one sunrise ahead. Soon the first hungry footsteps begin echoing across the hall, and the comforting sounds of another shared evening gather around the waiting tables, where stories, warmth, and simple food become every bit as nourishing as one another. You leave the warmth of the kitchens and step carefully into the snowy courtyard once more. Evening has settled over the castle, wrapping every rooftop and wall in a soft blue light. The snowfall has finally eased, leaving behind a peaceful silence broken only by distant voices and the occasional stamp of a horse's hoof. The cold greets you immediately. It feels sharper now. Your breath drifts ahead in pale clouds as you make your way toward the stable. A lantern hanging beside the entrance sways gently in the faint breeze, throwing long shadows across the packed snow. Inside, the atmosphere changes once again. Warm air, dry hay, the comforting smell of animals. A horse lifts its head as you enter, ears turning toward the sound of your footsteps. Another continues chewing hay without concern, its slow rhythm filling the stable with a sense of calm. The stable master nods politely before returning to his work. He carries himself with quiet confidence. Years spent among horses have taught him patience more effectively than any lesson. Each animal receives careful attention before the night deepens. Fresh hay is spread across the floor. Harnesses are inspected for worn straps. Water buckets are checked again to be certain no thin layer of ice has formed across the surface. The work cannot wait until morning. Animals depend upon people, just as people depend upon them. Excavations at Norman castles have uncovered large stable buildings and the evidence of constant repairs, reminding us that horses represented one of the household's most valuable resources. They carried messengers, transported supplies, and served knights whenever military service became necessary. A healthy horse could save days of travel. An injured one could change many plans. One young groom gently brushes a chestnut mare whose thick winter coat has become flecked with bits of straw. The horse closes its eyes for a moment, clearly enjoying the attention. Even working animals appreciate comfort. Nearby stands a sturdy mule with remarkably patient eyes. Unlike the elegant horses, The mule seems completely uninterested in admiration. It simply waits. Tomorrow will bring another load, another journey, another ordinary day. Its calm determination feels strangely admirable. Beyond the stable, another building houses cattle sheltered from the bitter wind. You step inside and immediately hear the low, steady sounds of contented animals chewing stored fodder. The warmth surprises you, not because of a fire, because living bodies produce their own heat. Several cows stand quietly together, their thick winter coats helping them endure the season. A servant moves among them carrying fresh bundles of hay gathered months earlier during warmer weather. Every mouth must be fed. Winter does not shorten appetites. The household stores enough fodder only because careful planning began long before the first snowfall. Summer fields produced more than immediate needs. Autumn became a season of gathering, drying, and storing. Winter simply revealed whether those preparations had been wise. Good seasons supported difficult ones. A pair of sheep occupy another sheltered corner. Their heavy fleece appears almost twice as thick as it did during warmer months. One looks up briefly before returning to its evening meal. You resist reaching out. Best not to disturb them. Their quiet routine deserves peace. Cross the courtyard. Faint barking leads you toward the kennel. Several sturdy dogs greet the approaching stable hand with enthusiastic tails rather than loud voices. They know him well. One receives an affectionate scratch behind the ears before eagerly accepting its evening meal. Castle dogs performed many duties depending upon their size and training. Some guarded entrances, others accompanied hunts. Smaller dogs occasionally shared living spaces with their owners, offering companionship during long winter evenings. Not every helper walked on two legs. As you continue your walk, a flutter of wings draws your attention upward. High above the courtyard stands the dovecote. Inside, dozens of pigeons settle quietly upon wooden ledges prepared especially for them. They ruffle their feathers against the cold before tucking their heads beneath warm wings. These birds provide more than pleasant sounds. They offer meat, eggs, fertilizer. A well-managed dovecote represented another valuable part of castle life, though maintaining one required steady care throughout the changing seasons. One old countryside saying suggested that pigeons flying unusually late before sunset meant fresh snow would arrive before dawn. Whether anyone trusted such predictions completely is impossible to know. But experienced farmers often watched birds closely because they sometimes reacted to changing weather before people noticed it themselves. Nature offered hints. People decided what they meant. You notice several chickens tucked safely inside a wooden coop near one wall. They settle close together, conserving warmth through simple closeness. It seems sensible, almost comforting. The youngest servant on duty carefully gathers the few eggs produced that day. Winter reduces laying, making every egg feel especially valuable. He places them into a padded basket with remarkable care. Not one is allowed to crack. The surviving records tell us surprisingly little about the exact daily routines followed in every castle, stable, or animal shelter. Each household adapted to its own landscape, resources, and weather, leaving many practical details hidden between the lines of history. Some routines remain silent, yet they are easy to imagine. The stable master pauses beside a large horse whose dark coat shines softly beneath the lantern light. He speaks quietly, not commands, simple words. The horse flicks one ear toward him as though listening. Perhaps it is. The relationship between caretaker and animal grows through countless ordinary days rather than dramatic moments. Feeding, grooming, walking, watching. Trust arrives gradually. Outside. The snow reflects faint moonlight now slipping between broken clouds. The castle appears almost transformed. Every familiar building wears a smooth white covering that softens sharp corners and hard edges. Even stone seems gentler. A cat suddenly appears from beneath a wagon. It pauses, looks directly at you, then disappears beneath another building with complete confidence. Its evening hunt continues. Small animals earn their place inside medieval castles by keeping mice and rats away from valuable food stores. Few residents would have considered a skilled mouser anything less than useful, perhaps even essential. The stable hand finishes securing the large doors before checking each latch one final time. Careful habits become second nature. Nothing is hurried simply because darkness has arrived. You stand for another quiet moment, breathing the cool night air while listening to the gentle sounds surrounding you. A horse shifts its weight. A cow exhales softly. Pigeons rustle overhead. Snow slides quietly from a roof. The castle feels alive in a different way after sunset, less busy than before, yet no less active, while people gather round warm fires inside. The animals continue their own peaceful routines, depending upon steady hands and thoughtful preparation to carry them safely through another freezing night. As you turn toward the softly glowing chapel windows across the courtyard, the distant sound of a bell drifts through the crisp evening air, inviting both weary workers and quiet souls toward a place where flickering candlelight offers comfort beyond simple warmth. You follow the gentle ringing of the bell across the snow-covered courtyard. Its sound is neither loud nor urgent. Instead, it drifts through the cold evening air with calm certainty, inviting anyone who wishes to leave the bustle of the castle behind for a little while. The chapel stands close to the inner wall. Its doorway is modest. Its purpose is not. You brush a light layer of snow from your boots before stepping inside. At once, the world grows quieter. Thick stone muffles the wind outside, leaving only the soft crackle of candles and the faint whisper of voices offered in prayer. The air carries a different fragrance here. Warm beeswax, old timber, a trace of incense lingering from an earlier service. The scent feels peaceful without being overwhelming. Rows of simple wooden benches face a small stone altar. A plain wooden cross hangs above it, catching the warm glow of several candles. Their flames tremble gently whenever someone opens the heavy door. Light moves slowly, almost like breathing. You take a seat near the back, allowing your eyes to adjust. Around you sit people from every part of castle life. A guard with tired shoulders, a kitchen servant still smelling faintly of bread and smoke, an elderly woman whose hands remain rough from years of spinning wool. For a little while, rank matters less. Silence belongs to everyone. The priest steps forward with measured movements. His robes brush softly across the worn stone floor. His voice is calm and steady, never rushing the familiar words that many in the room know by heart. Even those who cannot read follow comfortably. Memory serves where books cannot. Churches and chapels played a central role in Norman castles, providing not only religious services but also a sense of rhythm throughout the year. Feast days, fasts, marriages, baptisms, and prayers all helped shape daily life, especially during seasons when harsh weather limited travel beyond the castle walls. Faith offered structure as much as comfort. You notice several candles placed before small carved figures. Their light reflects gently across polished wood and smooth stone, creating tiny circles of warmth within the cool room. A child watches the flames with quiet fascination. His mother smiles, then gently turns his attention back toward the service. Outside, the wind brushes lightly against the walls, barely audible beneath the priest's voice. Inside, every sound seems softer than elsewhere in the castle. A cough, a whispered prayer, the faint rustle of wool cloaks. Nothing disturbs the peaceful rhythm. You find yourself breathing more slowly. One older man kneels carefully, his stiff joints reminding him of many winters already lived. He remains there for several moments before rising with equal patience. No one hurries him. There is no need. Time feels different here. A young novice quietly replaces candles that have nearly burned away. He shields each small flame with his hand until it catches the fresh wick. The tiny act seems almost ceremonial despite its ordinary purpose. Small tasks carry quiet dignity. Archaeological discoveries inside medieval chapels have revealed fragments of painted walls, carved stonework, and decorative objects that suggest even modest places of worship often contained touches of surprising beauty. Bright colours that have long since faded once filled many sacred spaces with life. You imagine those colours, deep reds, rich blues, golden details catching candlelight. The chapel must have appeared even more welcoming during dark winter evenings. As the prayers continue, your attention drifts toward the narrow windows. Snow presses gently against the outer ledges, reflecting the candlelight back into the room with a faint silver glow. Winter waits patiently outside. Peace waits within. An elderly woman beside you quietly fingers a small wooden prayer bead polished smooth through years of use. She never looks at it. She does not need to. Her hands remember every shape. In another corner, two children sit unusually still. They occasionally glance toward the candles before quickly returning their attention to the priest. Their effort to behave makes you smile. Even quiet requires practice. Among some medieval communities, people like to say that seeing a candle continue burning steadily during a fierce winter storm was a reassuring sign that hope remained close. No matter how dark the night became, whether this was viewed as simple encouragement or something more meaningful likely depended upon the family telling the story. Either way, the image is comforting. The written record does not always reveal how ordinary believers balanced official church teaching with local customs passed down through generations. Those two traditions often existed side by side, quietly shaping everyday life in ways that are difficult to measure today. Some answers remain hidden. Perhaps they always will. The priest finishes the evening prayers with a blessing offered for travellers still upon the road, for the sick resting within the castle, and for those working through the cold night. The words settle gently across the room. No applause follows, only peaceful silence. People begin rising one by one. Some linger for private prayer. Others exchange quiet greetings before returning to their evening duties. No one leaves hurriedly. Outside, the night feels colder than before. The stars have begun appearing between slow-moving clouds. Their light reflects across untouched snow until the entire courtyard seems to glow softly beneath the winter sky. Your footsteps produce a crisp crunch with every careful step. The sound feels wonderfully clear. A guard passes carrying a lantern whose warm light swings gently beside him. He nods politely before continuing toward the gatehouse, across the courtyard. The kitchens have finally grown quieter. Only a faint glow remains. Most of the cooking has ended. Cleaning continues. It always does. Smoke rises from the chimneys in slow, graceful ribbons before disappearing into the cold darkness above. You pause once more to look back at the chapel. Its small windows shine warmly against the snowy night. Not brightly, just enough. You understand why people return here during difficult seasons. The building cannot shorten winter. It cannot fill empty grain stores or melt frozen roads. Yet it offers something equally valuable. A moment to become still. A place where worries loosen their grip, if only briefly. The bell remains silent now. Its work is finished. As you continue across the courtyard, another sound gradually replaces it. From somewhere beyond the workshops comes the steady ringing of metal striking metal. Even at this late hour, the blacksmith's forge still burns, preparing tools that tomorrow's work will require before the next snowfall arrives. You leave the quiet comfort of the chapel and follow the steady ringing that echoes through the night. Each clear strike carries across the snowy courtyard before fading into the still air. The sound is reassuring rather than harsh. It tells everyone inside the castle that useful work continues, even after darkness has settled. A warm glow spills from the blacksmith's workshop. You step inside. Heat wraps around you almost immediately. It is a different warmth from the kitchens. There is no inviting smell of bread or stew here. Instead, the air is filled with the scent of hot iron, charcoal, and freshly cut wood. The forge burns with remarkable intensity. Orange light dances across the stone walls. Tiny sparks rise like glowing insects before vanishing into the shadows above. The blacksmith stands beside the fire with sleeves rolled above powerful forearms. Sweat shines across his brow despite the freezing weather outside. He grips a pair of long tongs, holding a piece of glowing iron that seems almost too bright to look at. With calm precision, he places it upon the anvil. Then comes the hammer, one strike, another, then another. The rhythm never feels hurried. Every blow lands exactly where it should. The metal slowly changes shape beneath patient hands that have practiced this craft for many years. You can almost feel the vibration through the floor. The work demands strength. It demands judgment even more. Evidence recovered from Norman settlements shows that blacksmiths produced far more than swords and armour. They forged nails, hinges, horseshoes, farming tools, cooking hooks, locks, and countless everyday objects that allowed a castle to function. Without iron, daily life would become much harder. A young apprentice watches every movement with complete attention. Occasionally the blacksmith nods toward the bellows, and the apprentice begins pumping them with smooth, steady motions. The fire answers immediately, its glow brightens, the iron becomes ready once more. Learning happens through observation, mistakes become lessons. The apprentice wipes soot from his face with the back of one hand, leaving a darker streak across his cheek instead. Neither of them notices. There is too much work waiting. A finished horseshoe rests upon a nearby bench beside several newly made nails. They appear ordinary at first glance, yet each one required skill. Even the smallest object carries hidden effort. You continue into the neighbouring workshop where a carpenter shapes a fresh length of oak. Thin curls of wood gather around his boots as his sharp plane glides across the surface. The smell changes completely. Fresh timber, dry shavings, a hint of pine resin. It is a pleasant contrast to the smoky forge. The carpenter pauses to test the smoothness of the board with his fingertips. Satisfied, He smiles quietly. The board will become part of a storage chest meant to protect valuable grain from dampness and hungry mice. Strong furniture matters almost as much as strong walls when supplies must last through winter. Nearby, another craftsman repairs a broken wheel from a small handcart. He studies the cracked spoke before carefully fitting a replacement into place. Nothing useful remains broken for long, whenever possible. Castle excavations have uncovered workshops containing woodworking tools, metal scraps, bone needles, and other signs that skilled craftspeople remained active throughout the year. Winter often provided valuable time for repairs that could not easily be completed during busy harvest seasons. Cold weather slowed farming, not craftsmanship. You step into another room where two women work beside a window, making the best use of the remaining daylight. One spins wool while the other operates a simple upright loom. The shuttle passes, then returns, back and forth. The gentle rhythm feels almost musical. Bundles of dyed wool rest neatly beside the loom. Most display soft natural shades of brown, grey, and cream, though a few brighter colours appear among them. Even practical cloth can be beautiful. The finished fabric will become clothing, blankets, and perhaps new coverings for benches in the Great Hall. Every thread contributes to someone's comfort during the long winter. One woman gently tests the tension of the woven cloth before continuing. Her fingers move confidently. They hardly seem to hesitate. Many surviving textile fragments suggest that medieval weavers possessed remarkable technical skill despite working with relatively simple equipment. Their fabrics often balance durability with careful craftsmanship, allowing garments to serve households for many years. Nearby sits a basket overflowing with scraps of cloth. Nothing is discarded casually. Smaller pieces become patches, or linings, or children's clothing. Useful material always finds another purpose. An elderly craftsman enters carrying several antlers collected during earlier hunts. He settles beside a workbench and begins carving one into a smooth handle for a knife. The pale material responds beautifully beneath his small blade, slowly, patiently. Bone and antler supplied medieval households with countless practical objects, from combs and buttons to tool handles and decorative pieces. They offered useful alternatives whenever precious metal seemed unnecessary. Every part of nature found a purpose. A young girl watches the carving with wide eyes before returning to her own task of winding yarn into neat balls. She hums softly, almost without realizing it. One old saying among village weavers claimed that dropping a spindle 3 times in one afternoon meant an unexpected visitor would arrive before the week ended. The prediction probably caused more laughter than concern. Yet such little sayings brightened ordinary work and gave people something cheerful to tease one another about. Winter welcomed small amusements. The true origin of many household sayings has faded beyond recovery. Some may have begun as practical reminders, while others simply survived because they were enjoyable to repeat during long evenings indoors. You notice that every workshop shares something in common. Nobody works completely alone. Advice passes freely. Tools are borrowed. Someone steadies a heavy beam while another cuts. Experience moves naturally from older hands to younger ones. Knowledge grows through conversation as much as instruction. Outside, the night has deepened. Snow reflects pale moonlight through the workshop windows, adding a cool glow beside the warm lanterns burning inside. The contrast is beautiful. Cold beyond the glass, warmth within. The blacksmith returns briefly carrying a repaired hinge for the carpenter. They exchange only a few words before each returns to work. No ceremony, just cooperation. The castle depends upon moments exactly like this. One craft supporting another, one skilled pair of hands helping the next. As you step back into the courtyard, the ringing of the hammer has softened. The forge fire continues glowing behind the workshop walls. Though its busiest hours are ending, tomorrow will bring fresh repairs, fresh requests, fresh challenges. Above you, the stars shine more clearly now that the clouds have begun to thin. The storm has loosened its grip for the moment, though winter remains firmly in command of the countryside. Across the snowy yard, movement catches your eye. 2 horses stand ready near the gatehouse. Their saddlebags have already been secured. Lantern light glimmers against polished buckles as several guards prepare for travellers who hope to leave at first light, carrying messages across roads that have become uncertain beneath the deepening snow. You make your way toward the gatehouse, where the quiet mood of the castle changes once again. The workshops behind you are settling into the evening, yet here there is fresh activity. A pair of lanterns hangs beneath the heavy timber roof, their warm light falling across saddles, cloaks, and carefully packed bundles. Tomorrow's journey is already being prepared, if tomorrow allows it. One horse paws gently at the frozen ground, another lowers its head while a groom tightens the final strap on a saddlebag. Every buckle receives a second glance. Every knot is tested with patient hands. Nobody wishes to discover a loose strap miles from shelter. The gate captain stands nearby, speaking with a messenger wrapped in layers of wool. His face is weathered by years spent outdoors, and his boots still carry the white dust of fresh snow. "You leave at first light," the captain says quietly, "if the road can still be found." The messenger smiles. It usually can. Usually. The word hangs in the cold air for a moment before disappearing like a breath. You step closer to the open gate and look beyond the walls. The familiar road has almost vanished beneath drifting snow. Only a few darker patches suggest where wagons passed before the storm. By morning, even those traces may disappear. Travel in winter demanded more than courage. It required patience, careful judgment, and a willingness to turn back when nature refused to cooperate. A messenger who reached his destination safely served his lord far better than one who stubbornly pressed into impossible weather. Inside the gatehouse, a narrow room provides a little shelter from the wind. A small fire burns in the stone hearth while 2 guards warm their hands before returning outside. One removes a glove, his fingers are pale. He rubs them together slowly, then pulls the glove back on. Simple habits keep the cold from settling too deeply. A wooden table stands against the wall. Upon it rests a wax tablet listing supplies carried by tomorrow's travellers. Bread, cheese, dried meat, a skin of ale, a small pouch of oats for the horses, nothing unnecessary. Every extra pound asks more from the animals. The steward enters carrying a tightly rolled parchment sealed with wax. He hands it carefully to the messenger. This reaches the sheriff if the roads remain open. The messenger nods without breaking the seal. Its contents belong to someone else. His responsibility is the journey itself. Written messages became increasingly important as Norman administration expanded across England. Castles served not only as military strongholds but also as centres where information, orders, and reports passed from one region to another. News travelled at the speed of hooves and weather. You step outside once more. The sky has cleared enough for stars to appear in remarkable numbers. Their light reflects from the snow until the landscape glows with a quiet silver brightness. It is beautiful. It is also deceptive. Clear skies after heavy snowfall often allow temperatures to fall even lower through the night. The cold grows sharper. You pull your cloak tighter. Near the stable, 2 younger guards are checking the horses again. One quietly places an extra wool covering across a mare's back. The other notices. Your father always did that. The young guard nods. He said a comfortable horse walks farther. Perhaps the old soldier was right. Perhaps he simply liked his horses. No record remains to settle the matter. The habit survives through memory instead. A faint sound reaches your ears, crunching footsteps. Everyone turns. For a brief moment. Hands drift toward sword hilts. Then the tension fades. An elderly monk emerges from the snowy darkness carrying a walking staff. Snow clings to the edges of his cloak, and his beard sparkles with tiny crystals beneath the lantern light. The gate opens without delay. He is welcomed inside. The monk thanks the guards with a warm smile before accepting a cup of hot broth brought from the kitchens. His journey has clearly been long, very long. He shares news from a monastery several miles away. Snow lies deeper there. One small bridge has disappeared beneath drifts. Travellers are spending extra nights wherever shelter can be found. The room grows quieter as people listen. Information is valuable, especially when it comes from someone who has seen the roads with his own eyes. The monk chuckles softly while warming his hands. My old teacher never began a winter journey without carrying a smooth pebble in his pocket. A pebble? One guard asks. He claimed roads remembered friendly stones. Several guards laugh. So did it work? The monk shrugs. I always arrived somewhere. The laughter grows warmer. Perhaps the pebble deserved a little credit after all. The story settles into the room like another log placed upon the fire. No one rushes to believe it. No one mocks it either. Long winters leave space for little traditions that ask very little and comfort quite a lot. Outside, the gate captain begins one final inspection before the doors are secured for the night. Iron hinges, wooden beams, crossbars. Everything receives careful attention. Archaeologists studying surviving gatehouses often find evidence of repeated repairs around doors, hinges, and locking mechanisms. Those entrances endured constant use, making regular maintenance as important as the original construction. Strong gates depended upon steady care, not only thick timber. A horn suddenly sounds from the outer watchtower. Only once. The signal carries no alarm. It simply marks the changing of the watch. Fresh guards climb the stairs while tired companions descend toward the warmth waiting below. Their duties pass quietly from one pair of hands to another. The rhythm has repeated for years. It will repeat again tomorrow. You climb a short flight of steps leading onto the wall walk. Snow crunches beneath your boots with every careful step. From here the countryside stretches away beneath moonlight, calm and silent beneath its white blanket. No fires burn in the distance. No travellers move across the fields. The world feels wonderfully still. Yet you know someone is always watching. Someone always listens beyond the walls. The messenger below finishes arranging his saddle one final time before leading his horse beneath shelter until dawn. Whether he leaves tomorrow depends upon the morning sky. Winter will decide. You remain upon the wall for another quiet moment, breathing the crisp night air while stars shimmer overhead. Somewhere below. The castle settles towards sleep. But the watch has only just begun. Through the darkness comes the steady tread of boots along frozen stone, reminding you that while most people dream, others quietly guard every soul resting safely within these ancient walls. You remain upon the wall as the last footsteps of the departing watch fade into the darkness. The night feels wonderfully clear after so many hours of falling snow. Above you, countless stars shimmer across the winter sky, while below, warm light escapes from only a handful of narrow windows. Most of the castle is settled into sleep. Not all of it. A faint burst of laughter rises from somewhere inside the great hall before disappearing again. A horse shifts inside the stable, somewhere nearby. An owl calls once from the edge of the forest. Then everything grows still. You descend from the wall and follow the sound of quiet voices toward one of the smaller chambers near the hall. The room is comfortably warm, its fire burning lower than before but still giving enough light for evening activities. Children fill the room. Some are the sons and daughters of servants, others belong to craftsmen or minor officials attached to the household. Their ages vary, but tonight they share the same refuge from the cold outside. One little boy carefully balances 3 smooth pebbles in a tiny tower. It collapses immediately. He laughs. His younger sister claps her hands as though the fall had been the entire purpose. Perhaps it was. A girl a little older sits beside an elderly woman, patiently learning how to twist wool into thread. Her first attempts are uneven, but the older woman offers gentle corrections instead of criticism. Slowly, she whispers. The wool already knows what it wants to become. The girl smiles, then tries again. Many medieval children began learning useful skills from an early age, often by watching older family members rather than through formal lessons. Daily work became their classroom, and ordinary moments carried quiet opportunities to practice. Knowledge settled into habit, one careful day at a time, near the fire. 2 boys carve little figures from scraps of wood left behind by the carpenter. One carving resembles a horse. The other is becoming something less certain. It is a knight. The younger boy insists. His friend studies the tiny shape. It looks more like a goose. Both begin laughing. The knight survives the comparison with remarkable dignity. A nursemaid enters carrying a basket of folded blankets. She hands one to each child with the calm efficiency of someone who has repeated this routine through many winters. The blankets smell faintly of lavender and wood smoke. You notice one child tracing simple letters across a thin layer of ash spread upon a small wooden board. His finger moves carefully, forming shapes before gently smoothing them away to begin again. The lesson leaves no permanent mark, only memory. Parchment remained far too valuable for everyday practice in most households. Temporary surfaces such as wax tablets, smoothed sand, or even ashes offered practical ways to learn without wasting costly materials. The little boy frowns. His next letter leans sideways. The older clerk sitting nearby chuckles softly. It will stand straighter tomorrow. The encouragement seems enough. The child continues. Across the room, another group gathers around an elderly servant whose face seems made for storytelling. Every wrinkle deepens as he smiles. He waits. The children settle. Only then does he begin. When I was no taller than that stool, the snow reached all the way to my grandfather's belt. Several children gasp. One girl narrows her eyes. Really? The old man places a hand upon his heart. That is how I remember it. The room fills with gentle laughter. No one expects perfect accuracy. A good winter story only needs enough truth to keep everyone listening. He continues with tales of clever foxes, stubborn donkeys, and a goose that supposedly frightened away 2 wandering thieves simply by making an astonishing amount of noise. Whether the goose deserved such praise is another matter entirely. The children seem convinced. One little boy quietly announces that if they ever keep geese, he wants the loudest one. The adults exchange amused glances. Across several medieval households, stories served many purposes beyond entertainment. They helped pass along practical lessons, family memories, local customs, and shared values during evenings when outdoor work became impossible. Some wisdom arrived disguised as laughter. You notice a girl sitting quietly near the fire with a small cloth doll resting in her lap. The doll wears a tiny wool dress stitched with surprising care. She gently adjusts its blanket, then whispers something only the doll can hear. Children have always found worlds inside simple toys. Excavations at medieval settlements have uncovered dolls made from wood, cloth, and even small pieces of leather, reminding us that childhood existed alongside responsibility. Play did not disappear simply because life demanded hard work. A young mother begins humming a familiar lullaby. Its melody is slow, gentle, almost like the falling snow itself, one by one. Smaller children lean against older brothers, sisters, or parents. Eyelids grow heavier, conversations soften. The fire seems quieter now. An older boy suddenly reaches toward the flames, not too close, just enough to warm cold fingers. His grandmother notices. She smiles knowingly. My mother always said, warm your hands before your feet. Why? So your heart never has to choose. The boy looks puzzled. So is it true? She laughs softly. I never cared to test it. No one else offers an explanation. Some sayings survive because they are comforting, not because they demand proof. There are many corners of medieval family life that written records barely mention. Children rarely appeared in official documents unless inheritance, marriage, or legal matters required it. Much of their everyday laughter, mischief, and imagination quietly vanished with the passing centuries. Yet moments like this seem timeless, easy to picture, easy to understand. A tiny yawn escapes from the youngest child in the room, then another. Soon blankets wrap around sleepy shoulders. The nursemaid gently gathers those too tired to walk steadily on their own. Candles are trimmed lower. The storyteller stretches carefully before rising with the help of his walking stick. His stories can rest until tomorrow. You step outside once more. The cold greets you with surprising gentleness after the warm room behind you. Snow sparkles beneath the moonlight, untouched except for a few careful paths crossing the courtyard. Almost everyone now sleeps. Only the guards remain fully awake. Their lanterns move slowly along the walls, tiny golden lights against the vast darkness beyond the battlements. You pause to watch them for a moment, knowing that before another sunrise reaches the castle, those quiet footsteps will become the only sound standing between peaceful dreams and the unknown winter night stretching far beyond the walls. You stand quietly in the courtyard, watching a lantern drift along the top of the curtain wall. From below, the light seems to float through the darkness on its own. Only after a few moments do you notice the guard carrying it, his cloak blending almost perfectly with the night. He never stops moving, neither does the cold. The stone steps leading to the wall are dusted with fresh snow. You climb them carefully, feeling the rough surface beneath your boots. The higher you go, the stronger the wind becomes. It slips through every fold of your cloak, searching patiently for any place warmth has escaped. At the top, The view stretches far beyond the castle, fields, woods, low hills. Everything lies beneath a pale blanket of snow that shines gently beneath the moon. It is beautiful. It is also unsettling. The familiar landscape has become almost unrecognizable. Roads disappear beneath drifting snow. Streams hide beneath thin ice. Even the shapes of fences soften until they blend into the surrounding fields. A stranger could lose direction very easily. The guard beside you keeps his eyes moving. First toward the forest, then the road, then the frozen meadow below. He listens as carefully as he looks. That seems just as important. The wind carries sounds over surprising distances during cold weather. A barking dog from a distant village, a branch breaking beneath heavy snow, the faint cry of a fox somewhere beyond the trees. Every sound deserves attention. Not every sound means danger. A watchman's greatest skill is knowing the difference. The towers of Norman castles offered excellent views across the surrounding countryside. Height allowed defenders to notice approaching travellers, wandering livestock, or unusual movement long before anyone standing below could see the same thing. Time was valuable. A few extra minutes could change many outcomes. The guard pauses beside a brazier where glowing coals provide a little comfort for those on duty. He extends his hands toward the gentle heat without lingering too long. Duty comes first. Warmth follows when it can. Another guard approaches from the opposite direction. They exchange a few quiet words before continuing along their separate paths. The conversation is brief, nothing unusual. The road remains empty. The horses are settled. The gates are secure. Sometimes the best report is the most ordinary one. You continue walking along the wall. Snow crunches softly beneath your boots, leaving crisp footprints that seem unusually loud in the stillness. The battlements rise beside you at regular intervals, offering shelter from arrows while allowing guards to observe the land beyond. Their familiar shapes cast long shadows beneath the moonlight. Stone feels different at night, colder, almost alive beneath your fingertips. You rest one gloved hand upon the wall. The rough surface has endured countless winters, long before your visit, long after. A raven suddenly lands upon a nearby tower. It ruffles its feathers, then watches the countryside with remarkable patience. One young guard notices the bird and smiles. My grandfather always said ravens know every secret before sunrise. His companion chuckles. If that were true, they would make poor monks. The two men laugh quietly. The bird remains completely unimpressed. Whether anyone believed the old saying hardly matters. Small conversations like these eased long hours spent standing in the cold, giving weary minds something lighter than endless silence. The night watch demanded steady concentration. Surviving military manuals from later centuries describe regular patrols, careful observation, and frequent communication between guards, suggesting that discipline routines mattered as much as strong walls. Habit became another form of protection. Far below, a faint light appears near the stable. You watch as a groom steps outside carrying a bucket of water. He disappears again within moments. Even now, someone is working. The castle never sleeps all at once. A sudden gust sends loose snow swirling across the walkway. Tiny crystals dance through the lantern light before settling once more. The wind has found a new voice. It whistles softly between the stones. You pull your hood a little lower. The guard nearest you notices. Cold enough, you nod. He smiles. It will be colder before dawn. There is no complaint in his voice, only experience. The records left by medieval castles tell us surprisingly little about the thoughts of ordinary guards. Payrolls sometimes survive. Lists of equipment occasionally remain. Personal reflections are far more difficult to find. The silence of history leaves room for imagination. You wonder what occupies his mind during these long hours, his family, tomorrow's weather. The warm fire waiting below, perhaps all three. The watch continues. Step, pause, listen, walk again. The rhythm becomes almost meditative. You begin noticing details that would have escaped attention during daylight. Frost forming delicate patterns along the wooden railing. Moonlight glimmering on the frozen surface of a distant pond. Smoke rising from the castle chimneys in slow silver ribbons. Everything moves gently. Nothing feels hurried. A horn sounds from another tower. Just a single note. The reply comes moments later from the opposite wall. The exchange confirms that every position remains alert. No words are necessary. The signals are already understood. Communication inside a fortress often depended upon simple routines repeated until they became second nature. A familiar horn call or bell could carry useful information much farther than an ordinary voice, especially when wind and weather interfered. Near one corner of the wall, you discover a small sheltered niche where two guards have placed a wooden stool and a clay jug. Nothing elaborate, just practical. One takes a careful sip before passing the jug to the other. Warm ale, not much, just enough. The simple drink chases away a little of the cold without dulling their attention. They return to their patrol almost immediately. Far beyond the castle, the eastern horizon begins changing almost too slowly to notice. Black softens into deep blue. The stars nearest the horizon fade one by one. Morning is still distant, yet it has already begun its quiet approach. The raven lifts from the tower and disappears into the pale sky without making a sound. Below, a rooster calls much earlier than anyone requested. One guard smiles. He always thinks the sun follows him. No one argues. Perhaps the rooster believes it. You remain upon the wall for another peaceful moment, watching the first hint of light touch the snowy fields beyond the battlements. Soon the castle will awaken once again. Fires will be stirred, bread will bake, buckets will creak at the well. Another winter day waits patiently beyond the horizon. So do its challenges. And somewhere below, in a small chamber warmed by herbs and candlelight, someone has already begun preparing remedies for those who greet the new morning carrying aches, coughs, and weary limbs from another freezing night. The first hint of morning has barely touched the eastern sky when you step into one of the quieter rooms inside the castle. It sits away from the busy kitchens and far from the noisy stable. The fire here burns low and steady, giving the chamber a gentle warmth without filling it with bright light. The room smells different. Honey, dried herbs, warm linen, a faint trace of vinegar. Everything feels calm, purposefully so. An elderly healer arranges small clay bowls across a sturdy table. Nothing is placed carelessly. A bundle of dried sage rests beside willow bark. Small jars of rendered animal fat stand near folded strips of clean linen. She moves without haste. Every motion has been practiced many times. A young assistant enters carrying a kettle of steaming water. Neither speaks at first. The silence feels respectful, not empty. A gentle knock comes at the door. A stable hand steps inside, removing his cap before speaking. My shoulder has become stiff again. The healer smiles kindly. Sit near the fire. He obeys at once. You notice that no dramatic examination follows. Instead, She asks simple questions. When did it begin? Does the pain travel? Can you lift your arm? The stable hand answers patiently. She listens more than she speaks. The healer warms her hands before carefully feeling the injured shoulder. Her touch is firm but gentle. She nods. You have worked harder than your muscles wished. The young assistant begins crushing dried herbs with a smooth stone pestle. The soft grinding sound blends with the quiet crackle of the fire. Round, steady, unhurried. The room itself encourages calm. Medicinal plants formed an important part of everyday care in many medieval households. Gardens attached to castles and monasteries often supplied familiar herbs that could be prepared as teas, poultices, or soothing washes according to local knowledge passed through generations. The healer mixes crushed herbs with warm fat until they become a thick paste. Its scent is earthy, almost comforting. She spreads the mixture across a strip of linen before wrapping it around the stable hand's shoulder. There. Leave it until evening. He thanks her sincerely. Whether the remedy will completely remove his discomfort remains uncertain. Yet his expression already seems lighter. Perhaps relief begins with being heard. Another visitor arrives. This time it's a young kitchen helper whose hands have become dry and cracked after endless washing in cold water. The healer studies the red skin. She reaches for a small pot of softened beeswax mixed with oil. The thick ointment shines gently in the morning light. Rub this in before sleep, and again tomorrow. The young woman smiles with your obvious gratitude. Not every problem requires a miracle. Sometimes it asks only for care. A narrow shelf beside the wall holds several handwritten pages copied long ago by careful hands. The writing is neat but faded with age. The assistant glances toward them occasionally. Mostly she watches the healer instead. Books can guide. Experience teaches. Outside. Footsteps begin echoing through the courtyard as another day awakens. Inside the chamber. The atmosphere remains peaceful despite the growing activity beyond the walls. Someone coughs quietly in the hallway. Another knock follows. An older guard enters with a tired expression. I have not slept well. The healer studies him for a moment before pouring a warm drink into a small cup. Steam rises gently. The smell of mint reaches you first. Then something sweeter. Perhaps honey. The guard accepts it with both hands. He drinks slowly. No one expects an instant cure. Morning often arrives one careful sip at a time. A small wooden box rests upon the table. Inside lie precious items used sparingly. A little imported resin, several tiny packets of rare spices, fine needles. These treasures remain untouched unless truly needed. They're too valuable for ordinary complaints. In one corner of the room hangs a bunch of dried lavender gathered during the previous summer, whenever someone brushes past it. The flowers release a faint fragrance that briefly softens the sharper scent of herbs. The room breathes quietly. One visitor leaves. Another arrives. The rhythm never feels rushed. Castle households often depended upon experienced women and knowledgeable clergy for everyday treatment, while more complex injuries sometimes required surgeons or specialists if one happened to be nearby. Practical knowledge usually travelled through observation, family tradition, and years of careful practice. No two healers worked in exactly the same way. The door opens once more. A young mother enters carrying a sleepy little girl wrapped tightly in a wool blanket. The child's nose is red from the cold. She sneezes once, then looks embarrassed. The healer laughs softly. I promise the walls have heard worse. The little girl smiles. Some of her worry disappears immediately. The healer feels the child's forehead with the back of her hand before preparing another warm drink. Milder this time. Honey, warm water, a few familiar herbs. Nothing bitter. Children remember bitter things as the girl drinks. The healer begins telling her about the first snow she remembered as a child. It covered every fence. It reached halfway up our door. The little girl widens her eyes. Really, that is how I remember it. The answer earns a tiny giggle. Stories can soothe as effectively as blankets. Before the mother leaves, she quietly turns an empty cup upside down upon the table. The assistant notices. She says nothing. The healer simply nods. No one explains the gesture. Perhaps it means nothing more than habit. Perhaps it once carried a meaning everyone understood. Time has a way of quietly folding such customs into everyday life until their beginnings fade from memory. Sunlight gradually grows stronger outside the narrow window. Thin beams illuminate tiny specks of dust floating peacefully through the room. The healer pauses for a moment. She stretches tired fingers, then reaches for another bundle of herbs. The day has only begun. Many more visitors will likely arrive before evening. A carpenter with sore wrists, a servant with aching feet, perhaps a child who has slipped on the snow. Healing often happens through patience rather than drama. You linger beside the warm fire for another quiet moment, breathing in the gentle fragrance of herbs while the castle steadily wakes beyond the walls. Voices become louder in the courtyard. Buckets creak at the well. Horses greet the morning with soft nickers. Life continues, carefully, steadily. Outside, the snow still blankets every rooftop, but inside the castle another kind of warmth quietly spreads, from one thoughtful pair of hands to another. Before long, those same hands will be welcomed into the great hall, where music, food, and unexpected celebration will offer a different remedy for winter's long embrace. By late afternoon, the castle begins to change its mood. The steady rhythm of work does not disappear, but it softens. Buckets have been filled, animals have been fed, firewood has been carried indoors, even the blacksmith has allowed his forge to cool a little. For the first time all day, people glance toward the great hall with quiet anticipation. Something pleasant is about to happen. You follow them inside. The hall feels brighter than it did on previous evenings. More candles have been placed along the tables, their warm light dancing across polished cups and carved wooden bowls. Fresh rushes cover the floor, carrying a faint scent of sweet herbs beneath the familiar fragrance of wood smoke. The room almost seems to glow. The great fire burns confidently. Its warmth reaches farther tonight. Several servants move through the hall, arranging benches with careful precision. Long wooden tables are wiped one final time before baskets of fresh bread appear from the kitchens. The smell is irresistible. Warm loaves, roasted meat, stewed onions, a hint of rosemary. Even before anyone sits down, the evening already feels different. You notice that people speak a little more freely. Faces that appeared serious during the morning now carry relaxed smiles. The heavy snow outside has kept everyone within the castle for several days, and simple company has become its own reward. One elderly servant pats the nearest bench. Sit. There is room enough. You gladly accept the invitation. A young boy arrives carrying a pitcher almost as large as his chest. He concentrates so intensely on not spilling the ale that he barely notices everyone watching. He succeeds. The table rewards him with cheerful applause. His grin could have warmed the room by itself. The feast is not extravagant. It does not need to be. Large wooden platters soon appear, holding slices of roasted pork, thick vegetable pottage, dark bread, soft cheese, and preserved apples gently cooked with a little honey. Winter asks people to appreciate what remains rather than long for what is absent. Households of this period often reserve their finest imported ingredients for important occasions, while dependable local foods form the heart of most meals. A successful feast depended as much upon generous preparation and shared company as rare delicacies. Conversation grows louder as bowls are passed from hand to hand. Nobody eats alone. That seems important. The Lord rises briefly from the high table. He thanks everyone for their hard work through the storm and offers a few simple words of encouragement. No grand speech, just honest appreciation. The servants smile, the guards nod quietly. Then everyone returns to eating. Warm food deserves attention. A musician settles onto a stool near the fire with a small harp resting against one shoulder. He plucks a few gentle notes while another player lifts a simple pipe carved from polished wood. The melody begins softly, like falling snow. Gradually it becomes brighter. Several children sway where they sit. One little girl cannot resist. She slips into the open space beside the fire and begins turning slow circles with complete confidence. Soon another child joins her, then another. No one objects. Even the stern steward hides a smile behind his cup. Music finds willing feet. You notice an older knight quietly tapping one finger against the table in perfect time with the melody. Perhaps he does not even realize he is doing it. Across from you, two women exchange recipes for preserving apples through harsh winters. One insists that adding a little extra honey keeps the fruit softer. The other politely disagrees. Both seem equally convinced. The discussion ends in laughter rather than victory. There are many ways to fill a pantry. The musicians finish one tune before beginning another. This one moves a little faster. Several younger servants clap gently with the rhythm while continuing to sing familiar words. The hall answers with cheerful voices, not perfectly, not professionally, beautiful anyway. A travelling merchant seated near the end of one table shares news of another castle several days away where, according to his story, the cook once baked a loaf so large that 4 men carried it into the hall using wooden poles. The listeners raise doubtful eyebrows. So how large was it really? Someone asks. The merchant smiles. Perhaps only 3 men. The table erupts with laughter. Stories improve slightly every time they travel. One elderly woman leans toward a group of children gathered nearby. My grandmother always said never count the pies before they leave the oven. Why not? Asks the youngest. Because hungry people count faster than bakers. The children burst into giggles. Even several adults overhear and laugh. No one questions the wisdom. It feels true enough. You notice something else that makes the evening special. People who spent the entire day performing different tasks now share the same space. The blacksmith speaks with the priest. The carpenter exchanges jokes with the stable master. The cook finally sits down instead of standing beside the fire. For a little while, work gives way to companionship. That balance mattered in every successful household. Long winters could weigh heavily upon both body and spirit. Shared meals, familiar songs, and moments of laughter offered a welcome pause from routines shaped by cold weather and careful planning. The evening grows warmer, not because the fire burns brighter, because the room feels full. A servant quietly refills your cup with warm ale flavoured by a touch of spice. Steam rises gently into the candlelight. The drink carries a pleasant sweetness, just enough. Nearby, the harp player begins a slower melody. Conversation naturally softens to match it. Several older guests close their eyes for a moment, simply listening. Outside, snow begins falling again. At first, only a few flakes drift past the narrow windows, then many more. Someone notices. There it goes again. No one sounds discouraged. The castle has prepared well. The storm may stay as long as it wishes. Near the fire, the youngest children gradually grow sleepy. One little boy leans against his father's shoulder before quietly falling asleep with a piece of bread still resting in one hand. His father carefully removes it, without waking him. The gesture feels wonderfully gentle. Candles burn lower as the evening continues. The songs become quieter. Stories slow. Laughter arrives less often, but somehow means even more. You realize that celebrations like this do not erase hardship. They simply remind everyone that difficult seasons are easier to endure together. Beyond the walls, winter remains powerful. Inside, friendship proves remarkably stubborn. As the final tune fades into peaceful silence, servants begin clearing the tables while several guards quietly prepare for another long night beyond the gates. The warmth of the feast lingers in every smiling face. Though everyone understands that before morning arrives, the fiercest stretch of the storm may still be waiting somewhere beyond the dark horizon. You wake to an unfamiliar silence. For a few moments, it feels almost peaceful. Then you realize what is missing. No footsteps cross the courtyard. No wagon creaks beyond the gate. Even the usual morning voices seem strangely distant. You rise and move toward the nearest window. Overnight, the storm has returned with astonishing determination. Snow has buried the familiar paths cleared only yesterday. Drifts climb halfway up the gatehouse doors. The towers stand above a white sea that stretches toward every horizon. The castle has become an island made of stone surrounded by snow. A guard passes beneath the window carrying a shovel over one shoulder. Two more follow close behind. The day begins with digging. You join them in the courtyard. The cold catches your breath at once. Tiny crystals sparkle in the air, swirling whenever the wind changes direction. Snow squeaks beneath your boots with each careful step, packed so tightly by the bitter temperature that it sounds almost like dry sand. Nobody wastes words. Everyone already knows what must be done. The first task is opening the essential paths again. Wooden shovels scrape steadily across the frozen ground. Others use broad brushes made from bundled twigs to sweep away lighter snow from doorways and steps. Progress comes slowly, very slowly. A servant laughs quietly after uncovering the top of a barrel that disappeared sometime during the night. I wondered where that had gone. The barrel naturally offers no explanation. By mid-morning, the main route between the kitchens, the well, and the great hall has reappeared beneath many determined hands. Elsewhere, the work continues. Fresh snow keeps falling. The storm refuses to surrender easily. A messenger climbs the wall to study the countryside before returning with a simple report. The road is gone. He does not mean it literally. The road still exists beneath the snow. Finding it is another matter. Several people gather around a rough map spread across a table inside the gatehouse. Fingers trace familiar routes toward nearby villages. None look promising today. Travel can wait, safety cannot. Castle households often planned for periods when supplies and visitors could not move freely. Storerooms, salted foods, dried grains, and carefully stacked firewood existed for moments exactly like this, when patience became more valuable than speed. The preparations made months ago now reveal their worth. You notice the steward quietly checking stores again, not because anyone expects immediate shortage, because careful counting prevents unpleasant surprises. He marks another small note upon his tablet before closing it with obvious satisfaction. Enough remains, for now, near the kitchens. The cook studies several hanging cuts of smoked meat before choosing the smallest one. Nothing extravagant today. The larger pieces can wait. Nobody questions the decision. Winter teaches restraint without raising its voice. Outside the stable, a pair of young boys struggle to push open a snow-covered door. It barely moves. A broad-shouldered carpenter joins them. Together they lean against the heavy wood. Slowly, patiently. The door gives way with a deep groan. Warm air spills outward, carrying the familiar smell of hay and horses. The boys cheer, the carpenter simply smiles. Sometimes victory sounds like a stubborn hinge finally agreeing to cooperate. Inside, the animals seem remarkably calm despite the weather. Horses lower their heads toward fresh hay. Cattle stand quietly together, their breath rising in gentle clouds. They trust the people caring for them. That trust has been earned. The youngest stable hand scatters extra straw across the floor. One older groom nods approvingly. No cold feet today. The boy grins. His work has been noticed. Across the courtyard, the priest helps carry baskets from the pantry instead of remaining inside the chapel. No one appears surprised. Winter has little interest in titles. Helpful hands are welcome wherever they appear. A woman carrying kindling pauses beside the great fire in the hall before adding another fumefull to the growing stack. She arranges the logs carefully, crosswise, with space between them. The flames respond almost immediately. Years of experience have taught her exactly how the wood prefers to burn. There is an old belief she quietly follows every winter. She never places the largest log onto a morning fire first. She begins with the smaller ones instead. When asked why many years ago, she answered only with a smile. The fire enjoys making friends before meeting giants. No one argues, the method works well enough. Outside, the snowfall finally begins to weaken, not stop, simply soften. The world beyond the walls slowly becomes visible once more. Dark shapes of distant trees emerge through the pale curtain, followed by the faint outline of a hillside. Relief spreads quietly. No cheering, just easier breathing. Even so, nobody assumes the weather has finished with them. Old winters have taught caution. Several written chronicles describe storms lasting for days, though they rarely explain exactly how individual households adapted hour by hour. Those missing details invite the imagination to linger among ordinary people rather than famous names. Perhaps that is where history feels closest, not in great battles, in shared shovels, shared bread, shared patience. As afternoon settles over the castle, children gather near a window watching tiny birds hop across the snow in search of scattered grain. One points excitedly, "They found breakfast." Another replies with complete confidence, "They always do." The adults smile without interrupting. Hope sometimes arrives wearing feathers. The blacksmith spends the afternoon repairing worn shovel edges instead of forging new tools. Every sharpened blade returns to the courtyard within minutes. Today's work creates tomorrow's progress. The rhythm continues. You step once more onto the wall as evening approaches. Freshly cleared paths wind through the courtyard below like narrow ribbons crossing an endless white blanket. Smoke rises from every chimney, straight into the calm air. The storm has spent much of its strength. The castle still stands, its people still laugh, its fires still burn. The greatest challenge was never defeating winter. It was learning how to live beside it. As dusk gently settles across the snow-covered landscape, a single drop of water slips from an icicle hanging beneath the battlements. Then another follows. Small changes, easy to miss, yet somewhere beneath the frozen ground. The long journey towards spring has quietly begun, even if no one inside the castle quite believes it yet. Morning arrives almost unnoticed. No bright sunrise spills across the castle. Instead, a pale silver light slowly replaces the darkness, revealing a world that feels softer than it did the day before. The fierce wind has finally fallen quiet. Snow still covers the roofs and walls, but the air no longer carries the sharp edge that kept everyone looking over a shoulder. You step outside. The silence feels different. It is no longer the silence of a storm. It is the silence afterward. Someone has already begun sweeping the steps leading to the great hall. The broad broom whispers across the stone, pushing away fresh powder in slow, even strokes nearby. Another servant chips carefully at a patch of ice beside the well. The sound echoes gently through the courtyard. Tap, pause, tap again. Life returns little by little. Smoke rises straight into the still morning air. Yesterday the chimneys fought against the wind. Today their grey ribbons climb peacefully toward the sky. You notice people smiling more often, not because every problem has disappeared, because they can finally see beyond the next hour. At the stable, the large doors stand open for the first time in several days. Sunlight slips across the straw, catching tiny specks of dust that drift lazily through the warm air. One horse stretches its neck toward the open doorway. The groom laughs. "You remember the fields?" The horse flicks an ear. Whether it understands the words hardly matters. The greeting feels sincere. Outside the stable, melted snow begins dripping from the edge of the roof, one drop, then another. Soon a steady rhythm fills the quiet courtyard. Water has found its voice again. Children notice before anyone else. A little boy points excitedly toward the long row of icicles hanging beneath the hall roof. They are crying. His older sister shakes her head. They are laughing. Neither explanation seems less convincing than the other. The nursemaid smiles and lets the conversation continue. Some questions are more enjoyable without answers. The steward walks slowly through the courtyard carrying a ring of heavy keys. He pauses at each storehouse, opening the doors just long enough to inspect what waits inside. Grain sacks remain neatly stacked. Barrels stand where they should. Nothing appears disturbed. He closes each door with the same quiet care, satisfied. Across the yard, two carpenters begin replacing a cracked plank on a wooden walkway made slippery by ice. One measures while the other cuts. Their movements require few words. You hold. I cut. The work speaks for itself. Fresh wood carries a clean, sweet scent that mingles with damp stone and melting snow. It smells like change. A flock of small birds suddenly sweeps across the courtyard before settling near the kitchens. Someone has scattered a handful of grain outside. The cook pretends not to notice, then quietly scatters another handful when she thinks no one is watching. The birds approve immediately. You cannot help smiling. Near the gatehouse, the messenger who delayed his journey several days earlier finally prepares his horse once more. He checks every strap with patient hands before placing a gloved palm against the animal's neck. No rushing today. The horse exhales softly. The gate captain opens one side of the great doors. Cold air enters. Not fierce, just crisp, beyond the walls. The road slowly begins to reveal itself beneath thinning drifts. Dark lines emerge where travellers once passed before the storm erased their tracks. The world is returning, carefully, one step at a time. The messenger mounts without ceremony. Several people raise a hand in farewell. No speeches, just quiet wishes for safe travel. Soon horse and rider disappear around the bend, becoming smaller until the snowy hills gently hide them from sight. The castle feels strangely proud, not because someone has left, because someone finally could, near the kitchens. The baker carries several cooling loaves toward an open window. The fresh air sharpens the crust while warm steam escapes into the morning light. He tears away a tiny piece from one loaf, tastes it, nods once. Good enough. His young apprentice watches closely. Next time, perhaps, the tasting will belong to him. An old woman passing with a basket notices the baker brushing loose flour from his apron. She chuckles. My mother never let flour leave the house before noon. The apprentice looks puzzled. Why? She said the bread would miss it. The baker laughs. So did she keep it? Of course not. The answer satisfies everyone. The story joins hundreds of others carried quietly through ordinary days. No one pauses to wonder where such sayings first began. They have become part of the castle itself. You wander toward the chapel garden where small patches of dark earth have begun appearing beneath melting snow. Nothing grows yet, not visibly, still. The gardener kneels beside one bed, gently pressing loose soil back into place. He works with remarkable optimism. Winter has not fully departed, yet he prepares anyway. Hope often carries a spade. The afternoon passes peacefully. Children race along the newly cleared paths until a patch of hidden ice reminds them to slow down. A dog discovers a forgotten stick buried beneath the snow and proudly carries it through the courtyard as though it were priceless treasure. Even the guards seem lighter. Their cloaks remain wrapped tightly against the cold, but conversations last a little longer between patrols. Laughter returns more easily. As the sun begins slipping behind distant hills, golden light washes across the castle walls. Snow that looked pale all morning now glows with soft shades of amber and rose. The fortress appears almost transformed, not because the stone has changed, because the season has begun to loosen its grip. You stand beside the gate for a final moment, breathing air that no longer feels quite so sharp. Somewhere beyond the hills, streams are beginning to move beneath thinning ice. Birds will soon return in greater numbers. Fields now sleeping beneath white blankets will awaken again. The castle knows this rhythm well. It has watched countless winters come and go. Tomorrow will bring more work. Always more work. But tonight, as warm light gathers inside the great hall and the last drops of melting snow fall quietly from the rooftops, you sense that the hardest days have passed, leaving behind a quiet confidence that only shared endurance can create. You wake before the first birds begin their morning songs. The castle is quiet. but it is no longer wrapped in the heavy silence that followed the great storm. Instead, there is a gentle feeling of expectation, as though every stone has been waiting for this particular dawn. You step outside. The air feels different. It is still cold enough to redden your cheeks, yet it carries the faint scent of damp earth beneath the snow. Somewhere beyond the walls, water trickles softly through a narrow channel that only yesterday lay hidden beneath solid ice. Winter has not disappeared. It has simply taken one careful step backward. The courtyard already shows small signs of change. A patch of brown ground has emerged beside the stable, where countless footsteps have packed the snow until it finally surrendered. Nearby, the roof of the bakehouse sheds another sparkling ribbon of melting water. The drops fall steadily. Each one seems unimportant. Together they announce a new season. The baker opens his door and stretches before beginning another day. Warm air slips into the courtyard, carrying the familiar fragrance of fresh bread. He smiles toward the sky. No more snow today. The stable master laughs from across the yard. You have said that before. I have. And one day I shall be right. The two men continue laughing as they return to their work. The castle has discovered something during these long weeks of cold. Hope grows stronger when it is shared. A young servant kneels beside the path with a wooden scraper, clearing away the last stubborn patches of ice. She hums quietly to herself without realizing it. The tune drifts across the courtyard until another servant joins with the same melody. Neither planned it. The song simply found another voice, near the chapel. The gardener walks slowly among the small planting beds. His hands rest behind his back while he studies the soil with patient eyes. Nothing green has appeared yet. He seems perfectly content. He has seen this moment before, many times. He knows that roots begin their work long before flowers announce it. You pause beside the well. The rope moves more easily now. The bucket no longer brushes against thick ice before reaching the water below. A young boy fills 2 pails and carries them toward the kitchens with determined little steps. Halfway there, he stops. A tiny bird has landed upon the stone edge of the well. The bird tilts its head, then drinks. The boy waits politely until it flies away. Only then does he continue. No one tells him to do so. It simply feels right. The messenger who departed yesterday has already become a story. Someone wonders how far he has travelled. Another guesses he reached the first village before sunset. The answers will arrive eventually. For now, imagination fills the distance. Children gather beside the wall where melting snow has revealed smooth stones hidden beneath the drifts. They collect the roundest ones into neat little piles before inventing games that require no explanation from adults. One stone becomes a king, another becomes a sheep. Soon the entire kingdom exists only in cheerful whispers. The older folk watch with quiet amusement. The castle carpenter carries a newly finished wooden stool into the great hall. He sets it beside the hearth. Test it with one careful push, then nods in satisfaction. No applause follows. None is needed. Good work has its own reward. Nearby. The cook hangs fresh herbs to dry above the fire. They sway gently in the rising warmth. Summer still feels far away. Even so, she prepares for it. That is how life here continues. One season quietly begins preparing for the next. A grey cat stretches lazily in a patch of sunlight that has found its way through the open doorway. The animal closes its eyes. It has chosen the warmest place in the castle. As usual, you smile. Some talents require no teaching. Throughout the morning, familiar sounds return one after another. The steady tap of a cooper repairing a barrel, the cheerful chatter of women carrying baskets across the yard, the distant ring of the blacksmith's hammer, the happy barking of a dog greeting someone it has missed. Each sound feels like a thread. Together they weave ordinary life once again. You climb the wall one last time. From here, the countryside stretches far into the distance. White fields still cover much of the land, but dark streams now wind through them like ribbons. Patches of woodland have begun showing hints of brown beneath their snowy branches. The road is visible again, not perfectly. Enough. Travel will become easier. Markets will grow busier. Visitors will arrive with stories gathered from places beyond the hills. The castle will hear them all. You rest your hands upon the cool stone. These walls have watched children become parents. Young soldiers become old veterans, and countless winters arrive before quietly fading away. They have witnessed fear, joy, hard work, celebration, ordinary mornings, extraordinary storms. Through it all, people continued baking bread, mending clothes, tending animals, sharing songs, and looking after one another. That may be the truest strength of the castle, not its walls, its people. You turn away from the view and descend the familiar steps toward the courtyard. Faces that once hurried through blowing snow now pause to exchange greetings. Doors remain open a little longer. Fresh air moves freely through rooms that only days ago guarded every bit of warmth. Life feels lighter, not easier, simply lighter. As evening approaches, the great hall fills once more with quiet conversation. Candles glow against the darkening walls, and the fire welcomes everyone home after another day's work. You take one last look around. The baker laughs with the blacksmith. The steward speaks softly with the priest. Children chase one another until a gentle reminder slows their feet. The old storyteller has already gathered a small audience near the hearth. Nothing remarkable is happening. That is exactly what makes the moment remarkable. The storm has become a memory. The castle endures. So do the people within it. Now, allow the sounds of the castle to grow softer. Imagine the fire settling into glowing embers, each gentle crack carrying away the last thoughts of the day. Feel the warmth of your cloak resting comfortably around your shoulders while the stone walls stand quietly in the darkness, asking nothing more of you tonight. Outside, the snow reflects the moonlight with a peaceful glow, and somewhere beyond the fields a slow stream continues its patient journey towards spring. The wind has lost its sharp voice. It moves gently across the towers, through the trees, and over the sleeping countryside like a lullaby remembered from long ago. The horses rest in clean straw. The dogs dream beside fading fires. Candles burn lower until only a few remain, their tiny flames steady and calm. The last guard walks the wall with unhurried steps, knowing another peaceful night has settled over the castle. You breathe in the quiet. You breathe out the day. There is nowhere else to go. Nothing left to prepare. Nothing left to carry. Only the comforting rhythm of an ancient home resting beneath the stars, waiting for another gentle sunrise, just as it has through countless seasons. May your own thoughts become as still as the snowy fields beyond the walls. May they drift slowly, peacefully, and effortlessly into the calm embrace of sleep, leaving you wrapped in warmth, safety, and the quiet companionship of a medieval castle that has finally found the promise of spring. Sleep well,